I shall take a cutlet on my way to the chamber. Do not do anything of the sort, for we're the gentlemen of Montmorency, and the diplomatist of Metternich. We will breakfast at 11, in the meantime, follow Debray's example, and take a glass of sherry and a biscuit. Be it so, I will stay. I must do something to distract my thoughts. You are like Debray, and yet it seems to me that when the minister is out of spirits, the opposition ought to be joyous. Ah, you do not know with what I am threatened. I shall hear this morning that M. Danglars make a speech at the Chamber of Deputies, and at his wife's this evening I shall hear the tragedy of a peer of France. The devil take the constitutional government, and since we had our choice, as they say, at least, how could we choose that? I understand, you must lay in a stock of hilarity. Do not run down M. Danglars' speeches, said Debray. He votes for you, for he belongs to the opposition. Pardieu, that is exactly the worst of all. I am waiting until you send him to speak at the Luxembourg, to laugh at my ease. My dear friend, said Albert to Beauchamp, it is plain that the affairs of Spain are settled, for you are most desperately out of humor this morning. Recollect that Parisian gossip has spoken of a marriage between myself and Mill. Eugenie Danglars, I cannot in conscience, therefore, let you run down the speeches of a man who will one day say to me, Vicomte, you know I give my daughter 2 millions. Ah, this marriage will never take place, said Beauchamp. The king has made him a baron, and can make him a peer, but he cannot make him a gentleman, and the Count of Mercer is too aristocratic to consent, for the paltry sum of 2 million francs, to a mésalliance. The Viscount of Mercer can only wed a marchioness. But 2 million francs make a nice little sum, replied Mercer. It is the social capital of a theatre on the boulevard, or a railroad from the Jardin des Plantes to La Râpée. Never mind what he says, Mercer, said Debray, do you marry her? You marry a moneybag label, it is true, well, but what does that matter? It is better to have a blazon less and a figure more on it. You have 7 martlets on your arms, give 3 to your wife, and you will still have 4, that is 1 more than M. de Guise had, who so nearly became King of France, and whose cousin was Emperor of Germany. On my word, I think you are right, Lucien, said Albert absently. To be sure, besides, every millionaire is as noble as a bastard, that is, he can be. Do not say that, Debray, returned Beauchamp, laughing, for here is Chateau Renaud, who, to cure you of your mania for paradoxes, will pass the sword of Renaud de Montauban, his ancestor, through your body. He will sully it then, returned Lucien, for I am low, very low. Oh, heavens, cried Beauchamp, the minister quotes Béranger, what shall we come to next? M. de Chateau Renaud, M. Maximilien Morel, said the servant, announcing two fresh guests. Now, then, to breakfast, said Beauchefort, if I remember, you told me you only expected 2 persons, Albert. Morel, muttered Albert, Morel, who is he? But before he had finished, M. de Chateau Renaud, a handsome young man of 30, gentleman all over, that is, with the figure of a Guiche and the wit of a Mortemart, took Albert's hand. My dear Albert, said he, let me introduce to you M. Maximilien Morel, captain of Spy, my friend, and what is more, however the man speaks for himself, my preserver. Salute my hero, Viscount. And he stepped on one side to give place to a young man of refined and dignified bearing, with large and open brow, piercing eyes, and black mustache, whom our readers have already seen at Marseilles, under circumstances sufficiently dramatic not to be forgotten. A rich uniform, half French, half Oriental, set off his graceful and stalwart figure, and his broad chest was decorated with the Order of the Legion of Honor. The young officer bowed with easy and elegant politeness. Monsieur, said Albert with affectionate courtesy, the Count of Chateau Renaud knew how much pleasure this introduction would give me, you are his friend, be ours also. Well said, interrupted Chateau Renaud, and pray that, if you should ever be in a similar predicament, he may do as much for you as he did for me. What has he done? Asked Albert. Oh, nothing worth speaking of, said Morel. M. de Chateau Renaud exaggerates. Not worth speaking of? Cried Chateau Renaud, life is not worth speaking of. That is rather too philosophical, on my word, Morel. It is very well for you, who risk your life every day, but for me, who only did so once. We gather from all this, Baron, that Captain Morel saved your life. Exactly so. On what occasion? Asked Beauchamp. Beauchamp, my good fellow, you know I am starving, said Debray, do not set him off on some long story. Well, I do not prevent your sitting down to table, replied Beauchamp. Chateau Renaud can tell us while we eat our breakfast. Gentlemen, said Mercier, it is only 10:15, and I expect someone else. Ah, true, a diplomatist, observed Debray. Diplomat or not, I don't know, I only know that he charged himself on my account with a mission, which he terminated so entirely to my satisfaction, that had I been king, I should have instantly created him knight of all my orders, even had I been able to offer him the golden fleece and the garter. Well, since we are not to sit down to table, said Debray, take a glass of sherry, and tell us all about it. You all know that I had the fancy of going to Africa. It is a road your ancestors have traced for you, said Albert gallantly. Yes. But I doubt that your object was like theirs, to rescue the Holy Sepulchre. You are quite right, Beauchamp, observed the young aristocrat. It was only to fight as an amateur. I cannot bear dueling since 2 seconds, whom I had chosen to arrange an affair, forced me to break the arm of one of my best friends, one whom you all know, poor Franz d'Epinay. Ah, true, said Debray, you did fight some time ago, about what? The devil take me, if I remember, returned Chateau Renaud. But I recollect perfectly one thing, that, being unwilling to let such talents as mine sleep, I wished to try upon the Arabs the new pistols that had been given to me. In consequence I embarked for Oran, and went from thence to Constantine, where I arrived just in time to witness the raising of the siege.